Thank you. I will try to use the microphone and make it a pleasant auditive experience for you. Thanks for inviting me over, and thank you for your time. And I will spend time explaining to you what I've done with my farm. I guess it could be called also gardens. As you'll see, it's not really your typical farm by any means. Is the sound okay for everyone? We enjoying this? Okay, great. Yeah, it's really I call it a farm officially, but it's really a very big garden. And I was really always a gardener at heart before I became a full-time farmer. And I started this whole thing 12 years ago. Quick brief history here. I was a stockbroker in Los Angeles for 15 years. I worked for big corporations, mostly looking at Wall Street every day. And I was really enjoying Ruth Stout. I don't know if you guys did, but she's such a riot. And she did exactly what I did. It's like I was totally coming out of the deep blue as far as gardening went, and never had any experience of it. I was in my mid-30s and got a house, had a place to garden. I said, why not? And heaven broke open, and I just went in, never came back, never looked back. It was just a matter of how fast can I get rid of this previous life. And I just became and it was like, wow, people thought I was crazy, And I just, to this day, 12 years later, I've never regretted one single time what I did. It's not been easy making it a living. I think it's easy to garden, but it's a lot tougher to making it a living. And of course, I live in America. It's not the land of the humble or the land of the frugal, right? More like the land of the SUV riders. So we need to really bring up the level of farming to that status as far as money goes, and that's something that I'm always aware of, and I will probably touch on this. Okay, let's move on into the presentation. What you see here is really a shot of the farm. Of course, it's hard to see, but the farm is 5-acre total as far as the ground that I'm using for the work I do. It's on a 10-acre plot that I rent from a very nice lady. Of that 5-acre that I have to deal with, the portion of the land which is actually cultivated with crops growing into it is 24,000 square feet precisely, which is about half an acre. And this is a working farm that allows me and my family of 4, including myself, to live well in the United States. So on a half an acre, and I'll talk about that specifically later. Whom you see here is Ray and Christina. They're part of my volunteer troop. I have a pool of about 20 people that love what I do, and they come and see the farm, they work, and they eat with us. I really feel like a farm should be a lot more than just a place to work. It's a place to enjoy nature. It's a place to socialize, to have a good time, to meet friends. And we eat. I'm a very big food person. And the reason why I love gardening is, one of the many reasons I love gardening is it puts food on my table. So there's a very strong connection. The food comes out of the garden, gets prepared, we eat it, and we have this incredible time together, and we become best friends. And that's Ray and Christina. They love it. Christina was in the garden yesterday doing all the harvesting for this morning farmer's market, and another friend of mine, Katie, took over my truck and is selling as we speak at the Fayetteville farmer's market. Who has been at the Fayetteville downtown market? No one. It's a beautiful market. Okay, what I want to talk about is my methods. I want you to be aware of what I've done. It took me 12 years to actually move from my apprenticing with one of the best California-based organic farmers, from his traditional technique, which involves intensive cropping, 4 or 5 crops a year in a beautiful tilled sort of way, tilling lots of composted manure into his soil and coming out with 4 or 5 crops a year per single bed, non-stop, just doing a great job. But it's very intensive in terms of inputs, manuring. It's constantly adding, constantly laboring your tilling into it. It's very labor intensive, and I chose to go another way, which is more of a natural way, and progressively moving away from all that labor and all that input, trying to minimize all this and go into something which more imitates what nature does, which is layering things up and not touching the soil, keeping that soil structure that Joel has been talking about intact, so that it retain all its magical value of water retention, which, as you saw, is very critical, for instance. Okay. How do you start? How do you start this whole no-till system? Well, you certainly don't start with a till, right? Some people go, okay, Patrice, I'll just till just when I get going, and then I won't touch the soil again. But right now, I just need to till just to get it going. No, you don't have to. All you have to do is you can see here on those pictures, on the left here is, and on the right is my garden around my house. It's not my farm, but I chose it because you could really see the departure point, which is you start with a flat space, and this is probably winter where everything is gone, and then you, using ropes and stakes, you start to stake your area where you are going to cultivate. And in that case, if it is a very small garden, you can also do something else, which is you can carve out the path. As you can see, do you see the drop there? You see the bed on the left here, and then the drop, which is about, in this garden here around my house, 18-inch wide. The beds are 4 feet wide, which is sort of a standard width for beds. You can bring it down to 3 feet if you're a smaller person. And the idea, of course, is to never, never, never touch the ground where things grow. So you never step on it. It's sort of one of the golden rules of no-till. I guess I'll talk about this more, but there is absolutely no source of compaction that you can control that will affect the soil, such as stepping on it, obviously. So you start with, I'm very exacting about my the way things are prepared. I'm almost to the inch as far as where things grow and where we walk. And even my dogs know that. When a new dog comes in, he has to be taught very quickly. So let's see, 3 to 4 permanent beds. Paths can vary depending on how much room you have, how much ease of motion you want around the beds. And beds up to 150 foot long, that's for irrigation purpose. I'll talk about that later. Path in mowed pasture, grass or dugout. Okay, if it's a small, I broke it down to 2 situations. If it's a big, huge, expensive garden like my farm, it's over ½ an acre, you don't have to carve out the path. All you have to do is you mow everything, mow the whole area, 2 acres, let's say, or 5. And then you mulch the bed area only, heavily. Are you with me? Just that area that would be the 4 feet by 100 foot long. And you mulch that up to 1 foot in thickness. And that will stop any sort of activation of what the soil does. There is no more growth left in there. Okay, question on mulch. What my source of mulch? Not hay. No, sorry, Ruth. Not hay, because hay, it can introduce perennial weeds that I will not want anywhere in my garden, such as Bermuda Johnson. Those are the big, I call them Darth Vaders, of my garden. So, and then if I spot any, it's out. So, but I will use leaf on a small, you see, I always go back and forth between small gardening and big gardening, but in my farm I use straw, pure straw, taken care of straw without any wheat or rye grains left in it, or else you're having issues with sprouting of that, and not straw that's been mixed with some other things and then you're back to hay, okay? But the leaf, I want to say leaf is really nice. I like to mix leaf. If back at my house, which is only half an acre around my house, I do a real nice, because I've got oak trees all over, I mix straw and leaf. Pure leaf is not really, it mats and it blows away. All of those gardeners will relate to. Another question.
When you say hay, you mean wheat straw, not hay?
Yes, wheat straw or rye straw, any pure grain that it's just one kind of thing, so you don't have like certain strands of Bermuda in there, rhizomes that will just come back to life. I know some very good farms around me that had messed up their whole area because they introduced Bermuda either in the form of hay or in the form of cow manure. Okay? Now back to number 2, and then I'll move on. In a small garden, you can actually afford to do a little bit something actually more pleasant to the eye and better to the soil, which is you carve out the top of your soil, the topsoil in the path, and then you start to have this up, you actually creating a raised bed by doing this, and you use any extra topsoil that you find into your path, and you spread it onto your bed, and that's how you start your garden. And then you start to mulch. One part that you see on the right here, I sort of showed you the finished part on the right. It's a bed of Swiss chard. Is how it's all mulch, and the crops are growing. The mulch does, in the case of the curvature of the path, does one very important function. It breaks up the erosion of the side of the bed. That's what actually, beds, gravity always wants things and erosion to go back to flat. But if you constantly mulch the edges of the beds at least, continually throughout the year, you'll never have any erosion. Okay. Now I'm going to go through several aspects of my system. Let's talk about fertility. Meaning in my book, organic matter input. What do I do to actually feed the soil? And as I speak, you will see that all my attention in my gardening system is to the soil. It's where I get everything. My attention is not to the plants. It's to the soil. My devotion goes to the soil, and the plant is just a result. I just pick it up, I harvest it and sell it. But and I thank them for being so beautiful. But my soil is really where all my attention goes. What do I do with organic input? I do mostly rabbit manure once a year, and this is 4 months prior to the first harvest. So usually happens in January when I don't have much else to do. And that is because USDA certified rules, not just that, but I could do it a little later, but for purposes of pathogens being there when you harvest, it has to be there at least 4 months. I use manure that comes from rabbitries around me, and it's fresh when I get it. It sort of cures for a few months. I accumulate it throughout the year, and then comes January, and then I start to spread it. Now, let me back up. My system also relies on permanent beds, as you've seen in the past slide. So everything that I do is exactly concentrated on the bed areas. And you as gardeners can relate to this. If I had a crowd of farmers here that row crop in, 200 acres, they would have a hard time with that concept because they just fertilize the whole 200 acres, No matter where the things grow, the whole thing is fertilized. But in my approach to farming, even on 5 acres, all my organic matter goes specifically here where the crops grow. And I guess you see the advantage. There is no waste whatsoever. I mean, why would I put my rabbit manure right where I step, where I have my path? That would be a waste. Okay. Other things I do. Fish meal. I do this as an add-on whenever I see some mostly nitrogen deficiencies that start to happen here and there. If I see a weak, and usually that starts when I do 3 crops, on one bed. I can do a spring crop, a summer crop, and then here comes fall, and I see, let me try to remember a place where I saw a deficiency, meaning, yellowing. It's not just the usual boom, I get my stuff. And I had some arugula that I planted very thick that started to weaken in the middle of my bed. I just added some fish meal. It's healthy as far as pathogen. There is nothing there really that I worry about in terms of health. And it does the job, once you add water. If I want a quicker response, yes?
How old is your manure, your rabbit manure?
I collect it during the year throughout, so it's fresh. So it's cured a little bit, but not very old. It's anywhere between 2 and 6 months old. Then it gets to be applied in January, and then it cures there in place for another 4 months before the crops are actually being harvested. Okay? Fish emulsion. Now, that's really do I have this? Yes. You see, I should really follow my logic here. I have made a bit of a distinction here. I draw a line between organic matter, which, let's talk about that, rabbit manure, and I also depend a lot, and there I completely, I'm completely with Wu Stout in terms of fertility. She's saying she was doing nothing except for adding that hay constantly. And it's amazing enough, I was so happy to hear this, because that's what I'm finding out, is that my mulch is maybe all I will need eventually. If I do my job right, if my soil life, does what I want it to do. Each year on my half-acre surface, where things grow, where I apply my mulch, guess how many square bales I use that completely gets digested and processed by the soil life? How many? Who wants to guess? 4 for the whole garden? Okay. More. It's more.
What size bale are you?
The square bales, the little guys.
Big ones or the little ones?
Well, the square bales, just the standard square bales, 3 foot wide, 2 foot.
See, when I think of a bale of straw, I'm thinking about the little ones, not the big
About 2 times on a ton.
Okay. The one you see, around, not the one that you buy in the little stores, for $25. Okay. Another guess. More. 600 bales every year gets, and I don't know where it's gone. Just think about it. 600 bales on that half acre gets totally digested out. That's the beauty of an active soil just doing its work. And guess it's all going into humus. I mean, it's all going into usable organic matter by the plants. Yes, Stan?
Buy them, and how much do you pay?
Now for the real practical stuff. Yes, I look like, thank God for Missouri, because in Arkansas we don't have that much wheat growing, but south of Missouri has some. I look really hard for clean, like I said, clean wheat mulch. The price I pay, if I'm lucky, and if I have a strong relationship, which is farming is all about that, is $2 a bale. 150 if I bring some, if I have a good smile and have some veggie in my truck. Yeah.
You said that you use mulch that's leaves and straw, right, together?
You can do that if you have a small place. I could never do it on 5 acre, but go ahead.
Oh, well, that's what I was wondering, if this 600 was the leaves and...
No. I'm going to mostly talk about my farm from that point on, not my garden. I might just occasionally talk about the garden, the half acre around the house. That's sort of my sandbox.
And that's what you use the...
And that's right. I'm surrounded by oak trees. There's nothing easier. And this is my technique to gather leaves, by the way. I just take this huge tarp, about 10 by 10, and I rake the leaves in. I join the tarps, in the corners, and I drag it, and I just drop it, and then I use a leaf rake, and then I just start to put it on the 4 feet of the bed, and then I start to layer the straw on top of the leaves, not the other way around.
Repeat the questions when they...
Oh, repeat the question because you can't hear it. The question is, do I use leaves on top of the 600 bales? No, the 600 bales were about my farm where I don't use leaves. It's just not practical to drag leaves on, this kind of area. I mean, that's a lot of beds. By the way, the 24,000 square feet I'm talking about are about 60 beds averaging between 100 and 150 foot long. So that's the kind of planning I'm dealing with. So you can relate this to your gardens. 60 beds that are broken down in 5 zones. And I will talk about that at the end, just give you some numbers about the farm. Right now, I just want to talk concepts, practical concepts, and then I'll talk about the farm. Yes?
Yeah, I think you were kind of getting to talk about it, and that you were saying that when you needed some extra nitrogen, you put on fish meal, but you have written down here fish emulsion.
Yes.
So I was just wondering...
I was actually getting ahead of myself. I really think fish meal is more like a long-term, a little bit more long-term. I think fish meal is more like a 3 to 4 week thing, boost. And I really think of it as being organic matter, although much faster than some of the other stuff. Mulch, of course, it's kind of more like, it's very carbon rich. It's kind of, feeding the humus, the long-term credit account for the fertility. And fish emulsion is my boost. That's the only one I really like to quote as a fertilizer. I don't like this word. I mean, I like to, fertilizer to me is a conventional agriculture where it's going straight to the plants. But I always like to think in terms of feeding the soil, and that's why I always go back to organic matter. Cover crops, okay, that's a very important part. I told you I had 5 zones. Every 5 years, one of those 5 zones get to be cover crops the whole year. So I totally give that up, and I do clover, oats, buckwheat. I'm not going to go into this, we don't have time right now, but as far as the technical side of this, but it's there to replenish the soil, increase the amount of organic matter, improve the tilth of the soil, build up nitrogen. Just go to any of the cover crop books and you'll see all the different advantages that it gives you. Crop residues, I let everything go down. Everything that we can leave there on the ground in the beds is left there, except for highly diseased tomato plants that are so beat up, or bad-looking things, so it gets to be taken out. Everything else gets to be left, after it's broccoli plants are being finished, it's there. I will use mowers to shred it if that's needed. And a good example of crop residues for me is beans. Beans is wonderful. Lots of organic matter left. You collected your last bean harvest. Who would want to take that out? I mean, I am totally against compost as far as labor-intensive practice. I don't need it. And if you see the shots, my soil doesn't need it because other things happen in my garden. Okay. Another thing I'd like to mention as far as organic matter being added, this is really, I don't know if it's a side note or not, but I mow my path and I get thick, you know, from, let's see if you can see, well, yeah, it's moving on, but I want to show you a path. You see, those are my beds, this is the pasture, this is the 5 acres, and you see how thick the grass is? That's just my pasture. That the original pasture that's being mowed time after time, so it comes out to be mostly grass. It's very heavy on the crabgrass in summer, and it gets very heavy on the fescue in spring, you know how it is. But I mow this continually. It's one of my, you know, kind of a dragging things labor-wise. I constantly mow the path around, but guess where those clippings go? They go in the beds because I open the side door of the mower. And it's constantly being feeding that clipping, those clippings of grass clippings to the bed. So I don't know if that would have to be looked at to see if it's marginal or substantial. Yes?
So you're being careful not to have seeds that way, right? So you're mowing enough so that you're not introducing the grass seeds into your beds.
Yes, the mowing never introduced it. Are you saying that, okay, go ahead and ask again.
Well, I guess I'm asking, you're making sure the grass doesn't grow long enough that it creates a
Okay.
seed that then
Yes.
goes into your beds when you cut.
The question is, am I concerned that the grass grows too tall in the path so it creates seeds to fall into the bed? No, actually, it's not really my concern. My concern is just to walk around. You know, this is where I work. I just can't work, you know, into 2-foot-tall fescue. This is my work area, is my path. My workers, you see, you know, this is winter on the left, so it's really not a good example. And that's my house garden. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, this is where we work, is in between the beds, and we need to have, you know, when we get this stuff mowed down where it's really, you know, 1 inch, 2 inch tall. It's just, this place looks like, you know, I mean, I want to work here, you know, people, my worker love it, I enjoy it. When it gets to be wild and high, it's just a drag. You know, remember, you know, I'm harvesting constantly, the turnips get lost in the grass, whatever. It's not good. If I promise myself I'm going to have one guy come every week, mow for me, and I'll pay that person just to be a mower. You know, one of the Hispanics, they love to do that, you know. They're really good people. They come in and they'll do the job because they do that for the gardens. I'm going to have one of those come. Okay, and that's it for fertility. My vision of fertility is that if I do my job with the soil life, you know, guaranteeing that the soil is never touched, never tilled, never compacted, eventually I will be like Ruth. I will not need any manure. Manuring right now is just a jump start, but I have seen the end of the rainbow for me is what Ruth Stout has experienced in her garden, is by not adding any manure or any, like, you know, it all happens because it's there and it's just a sustainable system.
You mentioned cover crops, and at what point in this cycle do you do your cover crops? And then how do you, then when you have a cover crop of, I don't think you mentioned ryegrass, but
Right.
But if you have a cover crop of clover you mentioned, then what do you do then you put the straw down again next year
right.
to cover over?
But that was a question. I'm going to ask the question and answer it. The question is, how do I deal with the cover crop? What's my rotation, and what happens if I have a big stand of buckwheat or clover? How do I deal with it, or rye or oats? Okay. The rotation, the whole logic behind my cover crop is once every 5 years, I take one of my 5 zones in the garden, because I have 5 clearly defined zones, and I will stop growing cash crops and will only do cover crop for a full year. So it allows me to do at least 3 cover crops. I start with clover. Now, let's say it's spring and I have this big old stand of clover. I mow it. The mower is just the only machine I need in my whole system, really. I have a tractor, I don't know why I have it. I guess to look like a farmer, maybe. You know, like the shot next to my tractor. It's a big, it's a beastie thing from the 60s. Okay, and but rye, I don't like rye because it stays there. Okay, I have this great, I don't know if this works. My zone is zone 6. I don't know if you're in zone 5 here. In zone 6, oats, this is my favorite fall into winter cover crop, oats. They are great. You put them in zone 6, you're going to have to adjust that to zone 5, and it will work in zone 5 because it's colder. You put that in first week of September, put some water on it if you can, or hope for good rains, which is not always the case in September. And then get a good old stand. It will stand if you do your job right, if you know, about at least 1 foot to 3 foot high. Or actually, here we go, oats on the right. I guess that's why I wanted to show you. That was my cover crop, you know, illustration there. And this is probably late October, mid-November. And then, guess what happened? In our zones, winter kills at 20 degrees. And take three nights of 20 degrees, and this will be gone. Now, rye will not, wheat will not, and rye will not. So you're stuck with it in spring, and you have to deal with it. Beat it up with a mower, cover it with mulch. That's what I would do, to answer your question, to deal with it. But if you want a bed which is right ready for your small seed in spring, like lettuce, carrots, beets, you're stuck with rye. It sort of mess up the ground, you get clumpy. But oats will rake out like a charm. You with me? And oats cost $7 at the feed store for 50 pounds. Not a bad deal. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Question? The question is, do I rotate my cash crops each year, my regular crops? Absolutely, I do. Just kind of a standard organic way of dealing with things. I don't just keep things in the same spot. I'm not sure it's such a, if you really have a strong soil, you know, very biologically active the way I strive to have, I don't think there is any reason to worry about disease accumulation. I think it's a result of bad practices, and then people try to rotate things around for disease or bugs. But if you are in another level of gardening, you don't need to really do it. But I do it just as an insurance that I just don't stay, you know, in the same spot with a problem.
I plant tomatoes 1 year here, over there.
Okay.
You're not changing.
Yes, like I said, that's not a bad idea. Go ahead and do that, and I do it too. But I'm not sure it's really eventually that necessary for me. Okay.
You gave us the spring and the fall crop. You didn't say the summer cover crop. You said clover
Yes.
in the spring.
Okay, let me just give you my ideal sort of lineup for cover crop. Start with clover. No, well, it depends on how you start the cycle, but let's say you're in spring, it's clover. And then I do buckwheat in summer. You can do 2 or even 3 of them. The buckwheat is wonderful for what? Who knows what buckwheat does really well? You guys don't do cover crops in all the gardens? Yes and no. It's really sort of lanky. But what about insects? Have you seen a buckwheat stand in summer? Are we talking about major pollination by bees here or what? It's crazy. I mean, you know, it scares my people away from it. It's like, I'm not going in there, it's too busy. It's really, really incredible to see those things. Wasp, everything. Okay, now for the biggie. See, before that it was like, okay, sure I need organic matter, but this is the biggest thing for me. It's the heart of my system, is just to have that soil life protected, enhanced, fed, and that's why I do a no-till. I know Joel did something great. He exactly, I always use images like this. He said, what if someone just pulverize this building and try to reconstruct it with the debris of it? Is that I mean, who would want to do this? Not even those Buddhists that do mandalas would do that, you know. There's no way. So think exactly the same way with soil. You go in there with your tiller, which is like a blending machine behind your tractor, right? And you blast this soil to oblivion and you expect it to rebuild itself like this? No. What you've done is you have taken your garden into another dimension, which I don't want to be in, where everything is pulverized, powdered, and then you throw some fertilizers in there and you give it to the plant, including compost. In some ways that's what it is. You try to rebuild it all you can. I think compost in that way does that. It's just boosting the life back as much as it can. No way. It's not, I call it soil terrorism, you know, I mean, that's what it is. And you know. Anyway. Okay. So, those are your cards when you play the no-till game. Of course, you start with no-till. You don't do it. Then mulching, roost out, protecting the soil. I mean, it's so obvious, you know. It's why it can work. You protect your soil from compaction from the rain. You create a buffer that, you know, maintains the moisture, so the life goes all the way up at the surface of the soil and keeps creeping in and aerating and working the soil. You never have an impact on the soil. Guess where my tractor goes if I ever use it? Maybe to drag some weeds out in March. My tractor is set so that the wheels sit on the path. I could never imagine my tractor going onto my beds. That's just, I can, like I said, no one in my farm, no one steps on the bed. I'm sort of a Nazi guy, type of guy. They know. Cover crops, it helps with, and then all the stuff, the mechanical things I can do to help the soil. The cover crops, it sends the root systems out. It does all that structure, you know, structure improvement work that cover crops can do. And then high density planting, that allows to create a natural mulch. And that's why I have this picture. I should relate, I'm sorry, you know, I should relate back to the shots on the slides. You see that set of Chinese cabbage on the left there? You see how dense it is? So, of course, you have to be able to do this with a lot of fertility in the soil, or else you're going to have a lot of stupid-looking cabbages trying to fight for it. And look at the lettuce in the middle. See how thick it is? It's very thick, but what it does, it creates a wonderful natural mulch that helps with compaction as well. This is all about anti-compaction devices so that the no-till works. So those are the things that you do so that it will not compact on you, and you will be able to keep a soil that works for you even though you don't till it. Yes?
For example, when you're growing lettuce or cabbage and when the plant is still in the small stage, I mean, obviously when you're planting, do you transplant your cabbage plants, and don't you have to, I mean, isn't that some amount of compaction when you're putting those in? And
all right. When you transplant plants, that doesn't, you know, don't you have to get in there, you know, with your trowel?
You know, when you're hoeing, you gotta, what do you just only pull?
I do. I'm going to get to the point where I describe my seasons, what I do to make this work. But yes, at that very, you know, 1 inch, square inch where you put the plant in, you could say there is an impact, but it's not a pressing impact. You know, it's you just trowel in, and you know what? I'm that crazy about this, and I really pay attention to how people put their plants in with their trowels, and I tell them to not be excessive about how they turn the ground. I want them just to go slit, and then drop. And because I am aware of what you're talking about, you know, anything that can press the soil even laterally is detrimental to the whole system. So the soil is sacred. It's a sacred surface. Okay, and that's it for that. Okay, now my system as far as season. How do I make this work? You know, how do I put the seeds in and so forth? So I call it cultivation system. There's 3 very, very clear seasons in my farm, and I think it can apply here. There is spring, there is summer, and there is fall, and they really fall very neatly in 3 months each. Spring is 03 to 05, summer is 06 to 08, and fall is 09 to 11. Right? 3, 3, 3. And if you can survive those 9 months, you are doing well. It can be really hard sometimes. And a lot of people that go spring, summer, and then they just, you know, they go home and you know, refresh. But, okay, what you do in spring is, this is very important, is you do actually open up your bed. This is where I and Ruth are in different teams. You take your rake and you're looking at possibly some dead oats in there. Now this is March, early March, when you prep your bed for spring. You will have some manure in there that was spread in January, and you will have little bitty weeds here and there, because my system doesn't rely on massive non-stop mulch. It's occasional mulch. We'll get into that. You rake the center 3 foot clean for most of the crops in spring. So the soil is exposed. That's a big, big concession I make to my soil. I really, but that's what I need to do. And the reason why I need to expose is really twofold. One is I need to put some little seeds here, you know, and I just don't see myself working really well opening up thick mulch and doing carrots and beets and salad and lettuce and little, you know, and bok choy and, you know, those little guys from the cabbage family. I can't see doing it without having a clean slate. The second reason why I expose my soil big time is soil temperature. I do not believe that Ruth could get a crop of lettuce in mid-April the way I do with her system. You need to have that soil exposed. The reason why it's even more important for a no-till system is no-till soil is colder than tilled soil. That's one of the big negatives, big negatives. I'll take it any day, but that's one of the negatives of not tilling, is that soil temperature is lower. Do you understand why? I mean, you know, it's the original, it's compact, it's the original thing. When you fluff up with a tiller, in the sun, in a sunny spring morning, and all that stuff has a chance to aerate with the outside, so it is able to go up in temperature, and that helps early crops. Okay? So I need to fight that. I need to be able, of course I'm a commercial farmer, maybe you don't even care. You know, you see, I'm always thinking, I need to get my cash flow going. You know, this is my commercial side. So my idea of an early crop for me is, for my zone, is early April, mid-April. I'm really happy when I have something at market for that. Okay. And so back to the heart. And I think I show you exactly here with a shot on the left. You see that early transplanting lettuce here. You see you can tell it's, look at the trees. It's March, right? March in the Ozark, no leaves on the tree. Nice sunny day. Transplanting my lettuces. That's Sandra on the right, Shauna on the left. And what you can see here, that's where I need that laser, you know. Can you see the debris? Can you see the kind of gardening I do? The debris on the left, on the shoulder, on the outside of the bed. So I raked everything out clean. It took me no time because it's so small. This is where you want to be gardening in March, to really clean up your bed before the weeds come in. And it's clean in the middle, plus or minus. And we try to get some of the manure back in there, because that's the issue is with manure, is you don't want to just pull the manure out. I have a little struggle with that, but I'm teaching my apprentices and my volunteers to be absolute raking aces. You know, the rake is like the ninja sword in our garden, you know. We really are good with it. And so you rake back the manure in, and then of course the rest goes on the side, which the soil will use it anyway. But, and then we plant. Okay? And we could do the same with direct seeding. This is transplant. I want to give you my list of transplants so you know what I transplant and what I direct seed, for those that really understand all that. What I transplant is lettuce, among other things, just to give you a short list. Scallion, cabbage, chard. That's my big sort of spring transplant. What I direct seed is cilantro, turnip, beet, carrots, bok choy, and pea for spring. Okay? Sort of give you an idea. Okay, now, I fertigate. Remember the fertigate? Why do I fertigate? That's when I am in when it's late March, April, and I notice, and maybe Joel will know that much better than I do, but I really feel like early spring. I don't know if it's the lack of temperature, the heat in the soil, but I'm just dying for nitrogen. I don't see that nitrogen come in. You know, I know it's stuff. I think it's what it is. It's just the plant are sluggish, and I've done what I could. I opened up my beds. The sun is there. It's not like, you know, I don't get sunlight in Arkansas there. It is sluggish. So what I do is I fertigate, which means I open up my fish emulsion tank, and it's in my irrigation system, and then it boosts, I think, my crops. Yeah.
You mentioned that you mow and you use a mower on your beds. How do you do that without compacting the soil?
Haha, now you caught me, huh? Yes, the mower, there is the weight of the mower on the four wheels are there to be a source of compaction. The question is, how do you avoid the compaction from the mower being mowing? But I use a push mower. Not a push mower, but it's a self-propelled, and we do it from the side, so we do not walk behind.
You do back and forth, or
yeah. What I do is, you know, like what do you do like this? Huh? I teach my people to use a mower by staying on, but you're still on a path. And you do this, and it works. So at least you don't have because you're really heavy on those 2 feet. The mower, you know, a little push mower is not too bad on 4 wheels. I can't avoid that. I could avoid it if I had a mower set behind a sickle mower, for instance, something that flies, or even like a bush hog set behind a tractor, and you know, with although the bush hogs have a wheel, but you know, you can work something out if you're really smart. If you buy into this whole system, you make it better, and then you call me, okay? Okay. Any question? Joel, you want to say something about that? Am I just dreaming, or is there an issue with nitrogen in early spring?
I think there is an issue. The nitrogen is being released by microbial activity, and in the early spring we have much less microbial activity. The soil temperature is the main.
That's right.
So, particularly for early greens, which are only going to be in the field for maybe 40 days, 50 days.
Right.
I think that you probably can get a big boost that you're observing by putting on a little bit of additional soluble.
Okay, great. So the fish emulsion is a good solution?
I would say fish emulsion would be probably an ideal solution.
Okay, as an organic, what's another source of liquid nitrogen, organic liquid nitrogen?
There are various materials that you can purchase that have soluble nitrogen that can be put into an irrigation system, but fish emulsion is probably the most widely available. There are other commercial formulations.
Okay.
It might be extracts from soy or or
Wow.
blood can be dissolved.
Am I doing
No,
okay?
no, you're doing fine. It's just that
Yes.
we're not picking this up, and it would be good to have
What
it.
about compost tea?
Compost tea is an excellent activator of microbial activity, but
Come here, Joe.
okay.
Oh, actually, it's this that we need.
Oh, you need that. You need that.
Compost tea is an excellent activator of microbial activity. The compost tea is full of microbes, and it also has the readily available food sources as well. But compost tea does not have as much nitrogen in it as something like fish emulsion. Fish emulsion normally is about 5% nitrogen. And most of the other soluble materials that you would buy would be in the range of maybe 4% nitrogen up to maybe 8% nitrogen.
The reason I was thinking of compost tea was you were saying that in the beginning part of the spring, the microbial activity is so low that it causes a deficiency or a lack of nitrogen.
Right. But the issue is really, I'm sure in Patrice's beds, the issue is not a lack of microbes. It's simply a dormancy of microbes. And so as the temperature warms up, then he gets the microbial activity. So I'm sure I would guess that his rate of fish emulsion is really pretty low.
Thanks. Thanks. Yeah, it's all about, exactly, it's about those things are dormant, they're asleep. It's cold. You know what I'm saying? All dormant. Okay. Okay. Am I being picked up? I screwed up. I'm sorry. Let me just fix this. Okay, is that better? Okay, I'm ready.
What were your direct seed plants?
What do I have direct seed? Do you want me to repeat the list?
Yes.
In spring, this is my main lineup, you know, as far as commercial. Cilantro, turnips, beets, carrots, bok choy, pea. I'm sure I can come up with more. Spinach is direct seeded, although I'm experimenting with transplant. Yes. Okay. Yes, and there was a mention in a slide before about compost tea as a question mark, as part of the list of not fertilizer, but organic matter and fertility. That's exactly where, you know, Joel just said that perfectly. The way I feel is it's a soil activator, and the reason I have a question mark is with my system, I might not need soil. I might be the last guy on the block needing an additional boost of soil life, the way I work. Now, some other biologically deprived soil might need a real help from compost tea. You know, compost tea to compost is 1,000 to 1 as far as microbiological content, 1,000 to 1. So, yeah. Yes?
Can you getting back to the slides, can you talk about the row cover hoops, the last thing on the spring, and what that picture is?
Yes, I'll get to the right, the picture on the right just now. Summer. Here goes summer. Well, maybe back up. The row covers and the hoops is just a season extension, you know, the Elliott Coleman stuff, you know, covering with row covers. It's sort of a standard thing. I could get back to that. But let me just talk about summer. Here comes June. And in June, there's only one thing. The 1st of June, I don't even wait for a week, is I want to mulch that stuff so bad. Because I realize I'm exposing my soil. I'm not happy about it. It was a concession to soil temperature, to reactivating, to awakening the soil life. Now it's time for me to get back to my natural system, which is to shut out the soil from exposure to, you know, to the heat, to the elements, to the rain. I mulch everything. Here comes my 600 bale. You know, you can hear the sound of those bales just being just spread everywhere. And of course, here come my summer crops. You know, my tomatoes, my plants. They all go in straight in mulch. Those usually, well, what I do is I do mulch before June, but if I have some of those plants coming in May, I will mulch in May. So it's not exactly a perfect 06 start. That's where my mulch, I'm desperate to mulch the place. Okay. And then shade cover, the one on the right here, I'm a big proponent of shade cover. I do lettuce around the clock. I'm usually the last guy at market in summer. I mean, the only guy in summer selling lettuce. Big heads of lettuce. It's usually 50%. Oh, the question, I'm sorry. The question was what percentage shading on the shading clause, and I answered it's 50%.
With your shade cover, how do you keep it anchored in spring when you have the strong wind blowing it?
Okay, the question is how do you keep all your covers, you know, why don't you become an apprentice? We have openings. But there is just systems that I've developed over the years to make it all hold against the wind. Well, let me talk about this system. Well, that doesn't really have any wind take here because it's all open, you know, in summer. But when I have a real issue with wind, what I do is I use special clip system. And I don't know if I can explain in details now, but there is a clips, you know, that I worked out, and it doesn't go away. It just stick. And I use it. It's usually a combination of pieces of hose and electric wire. I never buy things like clips. I don't have any catalogs of. I always create my own. So, yes, it's a good question, but I'm not sure I have the time to address it. Good. More? Yes.
Yeah, so the hoops that we see on the right there, are they used for supporting shade cloth? I'm a little confused about
The what? I'm sorry, the question?
the hoops in the picture
Okay.
on the right there.
Yes.
Are
Now,
they supporting shade cloth?
yes, the on the right here is a summer setup where I use PVC hoops that are, have rebar feet put in the ground, and then the PVC is arched between the two sides of the bed, and then on top of it, what I do is I take a regular roll of shade. This is really something took me a few years too. I take the regular size, which is about 8 feet wide, and I cut it in two with a pair of scissors, and as you can see, it spans. Why? Okay, I'll have a quiz for you here. It spans half the arch, and it's clipped with little hoses and electric wire, you know, and twisted on top of the PVC. Is that answering your question about what those hoops are?
But it's under.
It looks like it's
It appears
under.
to be under the hoops.
I think it's just a picture thing. It sits on top of it.
Gotcha, okay.
It's on top.
I did answer the question.
You can tell the further out there, you can see it's on top of it. But guess, okay, quiz time. Why is it only half and not the whole arch covered? And obviously this is against the heat of summer. Someone has an issue?
You only get the heat when it's directly overhead and you need the ventilation.
Wow, that's good. That's really good. You got it exactly right.
Really?
Yes. So it's just little things like this that, you know, really makes gardening is fun. It's full of how ingenious you can be about things, and it works, and your lettuces grow in the middle of summer, and it's fun. Okay. And then, so that's sort of, in a nutshell, what it's all about. It's about mulching and then doing some covering, and then you do your summer stuff. Okay, what are the black tubes there? It's irrigation. I'll talk about that in just 1 minute. It's about irrigation. And of course, see, Joe had a big thing on water. I have one big thing too.
Quick question on mulching direct seeded crops. What's your sequence of applying the mulch? Say on the transplants, you first mulch and then transplant through it.
Mm-hmm.
Put the plants in and then mulch around them. And on direct seeded crops, how do you do it? You let's say peas. You wait until whatever, and then you mulch around them, or do you not mulch them?
You want to say peas? It's in general, just peas? You want me to work with peas? Did you say an example? You want peas? Okay, the question is, how do you work the sequence of the mulching and the planting or the seeding? That's really important, and it's like it takes years also to get it all right. But I'll take peas, and I'm not sure I'm ready to give it just one logical stream for all the crops, but I can think back to each crop. Peas, because it's a spring, so it needs the heat, it's going to be open up. But what I do with peas is really interesting. This is such a result of experience. Bear with me, I will mulch the inside 2 feet of the bed. That's done. And then I will expose the outside foot. Then, on the very side of the middle, it's like a mohawk. Can you imagine the mohawk? I will enter the peas on the very side of the mulch. And the peas will grow, and you'll have that outside foot to heat up. The peas will be up, and then when the peas is developed enough and it's warmer, because peas hate the heat, I will bring that other foot of mulch on either side to complete. I did something which I like, and you see the result, is I do a T, and the water that I don't need to lower the pressure in the system goes back in the form of a little fountain to add oxygen to the pond. It's much better than a reducing valve. It's actually more powerful, and it's about 1/10 of the cost. I just dreamt that one up, and I woke up and I said, oh my God, that's good. And do people dream about gardens? I do. Now, what happens if the pond goes down? This is summer, Arkansas, the last 3 years, and it's drought time. 8 weeks without a drop of rain. Can somebody relate to that? And you're starting to really wonder what you're going to do, and because you're losing your pond, and you need a well. But in my case, I do not need the well until I need a well. Do you understand that? I only have the well go into the pond. The well is not connected to my field. It's a triangle situation. It's well to pond, pond to field. Pond, the peas are really bad. Pond, okay. Pond, the pond will do all it needs to do until I'm out of rains. And then I switch the well switch, and then it replenishes the pond so the pond can do its function again. Do you understand? So you're only using I use the well maybe 2 weeks of the year, and I felt good about that. I mean, I'm not affecting the water tables as much as some other farms. I mean, some of those guys out there the well is on non-stop, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm saying no. Okay, that's for water, I think, and
I missed how much PSI do you use in your home?
It's a low pressure system. It takes anywhere between 6 and 13 PSI. So when you touch that tape, you can squeeze it in. It's not tight, and the water oozes out of it. It's a very safe system. Yes?
Do you save your drip tape from year to year, so you roll it up like in the winter and then roll it back out in the spring?
Do I save and roll back? Yes, I save and roll back all my tapes. But my biggest problem with my tape is not really even the weather or the wearing of it. It's crows and rodents. But crows, you know what crows do? They just get a drink, It's hot. Hey, I'm not going to fly to the pond. I've got this great, bar here. I'm just going to stop and just have a drink. And they peck the tape, and it ruins the whole tape.
When do you do your watering? At what time of day?
I water when I farm, which is in the morning. I want to be there, because it's constantly, a source like crows will have there's a jet of water, I'm losing all. So I need to be around my water because it's too big of a system. I don't like to be away from it, so it's in the morning. But the one thing I need to mention is usually the way I look at irrigation is irrigation coming from me as a farmer is a survival system. I don't irrigate to grow a plant. I irrigate so that the plant survives, wilting until the next rain. So I'm really gentle on the amount of irrigation I use in the hot months. I just will slow down my yields, I know that. But I just count, it's just not me, I'm sort of a eco type. So that's why Marty invited me.
So you only water when the plant needs it. You don't do it every day or just...
Okay, yes, I didn't answer that question. Well, you see, that it depends on a lettuce, even the lettuce under that hoop there that you saw, will not make it 2 days in a typical drought situation in Arkansas. It will just wilt and die. So I need every other day, an hour and a half to 2 hours on those lettuce, if not 3 hours, until the soil. And then it's even that. I mean, ideally, I would like to have it every day for an hour and a half or 2 on the lettuce, on the stuff which is very, very sensitive. Now, on some other plant, tomatoes, it's plant related. Tomatoes, 1 good soaking a week. It's deep rooted.
You keep mentioning growing lettuce in the summertime, and it's not. Do you do anything do you have to do anything to keep bitterness from happening with your lettuce?
Yep.
Do you use special varieties, certain varieties?
Great question. Lettuce, bitterness in lettuce in the heat, yes, big time problem. The answer is variety. And not just that, the answer is one variety. I can't find anything else but that variety that does a job, and my variety, and please tell me if you know another one that makes it, and it's called Magenta. Magenta from Johnny's or other places. Magenta will not get bitter, will not bolt. It's just a miracle lettuce. And I tried some of the cousins. I tried Cherokee this year, and it's just not making it the way Magenta does. So that's for the little kernel of wisdom on varieties today. Okay, I'm almost there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on insect disease control. I lose crops, period. I lose crops to stuff, and it's part of being an organic farmer, I think. But if you have a very balanced place and you create a beautiful natural setting for things, it will slowly melt away and you'll have less and less insect breakouts. The table you see, this is sort of not related, but this is my table about a month ago, 3 weeks ago. This is what I sold 3 weeks ago on a Saturday. Maybe you can see what it is. There's peppers on the left, tomatoes, maybe some beans, onions on the left, lettuce on the right, bok choy, cilantro, Japanese turnips, I think some daikon on top there. And then a lettuce mix in the middle. I do a lot of lettuce mix, tiny little baby stuff. So, it's a good living. It's beautiful. You feed a lot of people. This is sort of, where you kind of rest on your laurels. Just look at the table. You just did it. It's fun. The only thing I use to really go after things is 2 things. I use BT against all the worm-like things. It's a bacteriological, it's an organically correct solution. And then the other one is a mix of pyrethrum and diatomaceous earth, which is wettable. You can use as a spray, and that's the one you can use on harlequin bugs. I'm still trying to find a good way to deal with squash bugs. I'm sorry, I don't have a miracle answer for you today. And for the last slide, okay, this is where we stand. Yes.
Yeah, just about insects. Do you have much of a problem with leaf beetles on bok choy, for example?
Flea beetles on bok choy? No, not really. Flea beetles on eggplants? Yes. It seems to be that I get a lot less bug problems than most farms. But like I said, I have a squash bug problem, big time. And so I'm down to the last. And flea beetles on eggplants, I'm still battling it. Of course, I don't know if I mentioned that, but I use row covers until I can take them off. That's really a good defensive way. You know, just keep those row covers, those floating covers on top of the plants, especially on eggplants or squashes, and make the plant as big as you can until they finally need to be pollinated, and you know, then take the cover off, and then see if the plant can make it. Okay, the farm by the numbers. 4 zones where the 4 out of 5 that make the real the cash crops happen. That's half an acre, 2 to 4 workers from 8 to noon. We only work 3 mornings a week. Okay, this is not crazy stuff where you know we're enslaved. 3 farmers markets per week, 1 big store. Those are my accounts. 1 big store like the size of a Whole Food, sort of a little smaller than a Whole Food. 2 restaurants that are really strong accounts. Make $50,000 a year gross, net 40. The reason I make 40, I should really net only 35, but I do also, I have a farm school and I train people and I have lectures, so it lowers my labor because I don't have to pay those guys as much. Can you see that? Yeah. So very high margin, sell every single piece. Okay, this is sort of my claim for fame. There's not one vegetable that gets composted in my garden. Every single piece gets sold. There's nothing that comes back. Nothing. I sell everything. I know that's hard to believe, but it's the way. 3 months vacation. I love that. And then the 2 greatest dogs on earth, Billy and Roo. That's it. Thank you for the good technology here. And okay, so we're going to try to do this the way I would tackle a typical bed. This is going to be overwintered garlic. Who does that at home? Today. All right. After this. Great. Garlic is this great plant that keeps you busy, you know, late fall and fun, especially at a day like this. It's wonderful. I understand there's Bermuda grass in there, right, Marty?
Yeah, there was. We put cardboard under it with straw on top. I was trying to smother it out.
Okay.
It's been on about 2 or 3 months.
All right. 2 years would be better, but but it's okay because one good technique against Bermuda grass is actually smothering it and just covering it and shutting it out as much as possible until finally the plant quits wanting to come back up. So that's a good start. Yeah, I can see some dead stuff here. Okay, so we're going to plant garlic. We're going to do on a bed like this 4 foot wide. How many rows of garlic? Of course, the answer to that, or the spacing. You know, John Jeavons big on spacing, but the real way to answer that question is how much fertility do you have in there? Because I can see, for instance, that cabbage there, you know, it could be fine in some other garden, but just the person that put the cabbage was very hopeful, and there's too much in there for the fertility of the place. So we're going to be on the safe side, and then put 3 rows in there. Okay, on the high side, you could go all the way to 5 if you think you really have a real beefy soil, lots of fertility ready to go. So 3 is fine. Of course, equally separated. So we'll go, 1 foot, one foot apart, centered. So we'll do this, and I'm going to show you how to curve out. This is a good situation. This will be the first bed ever done this way, because in the back here it's more conventional, it's just flat. But I want to show you how to do the curvature, and hopefully some people can experiment this with their own hands, right? Some people want to really get real with this. They can come with the tools. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how not to mess around with it, just go straight to the point. we're going to put the, just like Ruth Stout did with her seed, that hysterical, like she was like going like this. That was great. Just something with a blunt, blunt sort of end, and you don't need to go very deep, maybe 1 inch, and we're going to drop the garlic in there, in that trench, and just do the Ruth Stout thing, just mess it around. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll let you have fun. You can maybe try, some strong men or females can try to do the same thing with this, maybe. The one that will do the middle row will have to be a tall person, because you have to bend over and reach the middle. And I'll show you sort of how it's done. And go like this. Okay? I take it back. There's too much. The mulch is too much, so we're going to need to rake it out first. Okay? There's too much there in the middle. So, first step, change of strategy, is okay. Okay, someone does that. We have plenty of rakes. Let's open up that 4-foot bend here.
I don't have my gloves though. I'm going to get calloused.
In the meantime, I'll do the fill up time thing here. I want to have a plug, and this is going to look like I'm part of this company. Commercial break. I discover very, very few new things that I use in gardening. You know, just a lot of useless gizmos out there that I never really use. But who knows about nitrile gloves? Nitrile gloves. This is the new generation of gloves. It came out in about 4 or 5 years, and now it's everywhere. Lowe's has them. Those gloves they're a certain kind. They have like a real, I don't explain this. It's very tight. It just feels like a second skin. You can work with water with it. It doesn't get heavy. It's a perfect tool, and it costs $2 a pair, and it lasts on me, with my kind of work, 3 or 4 months. So look at those. This is saving my hands. I thought it would be useful. Or another thing, a little trick for you gardeners. Sorry, I want to show you how to do a knot around stakes. Would like to know that? I mean, a real simple one. Look. This has no knot on it. See? But it held perfectly fine. So all you have to do is to tense it on this side and then go around twice, and that's it. And it'll never go away, and it's instant release. Just another little trick that you need to, if you do this all day long. Little things. Little things maybe, Okay, that looks good, guys.
Get 1/4 hand it to somebody.
Okay. Now go. Let's have the markers. That's a dock. That's yellow dock. That's Bermuda. Oh, that dandelion? Okay. Yeah, right. Thank you. What will happen with Bermuda grass here? We're going to ignore it for now. The garlic will poke, but it will poke. When will the garlic will poke through? Let's see. Huh? No. In a month from now, you'll have it. You'll have a little, a poker. I mean, a little spike, probably late November, and that's where it'll go. Just a little spike, typically, and then it'll rage in March. But when does Bermuda really takes on? May. It's a May thing, right? Late May. So you've got time, and then so the garlic will move on and will be nice and lush, and then in May will be, the attack of the Bermuda, and that's when you need to absolutely be on top of it. And gardening is really that. It's like you need to be on top of it. You can't just stay away from your garden more than a week. I'd say good gardening happens about 2 hours a week, per week. More than that is better. Less than that is not right. You just lose your garden. Okay, we need like the trenchers there. Okay, Go 1 inch deep. Come on, guys. Who wants to do it? Like this. That's all you need to do. Okay? Come on. Somebody has to who want to do it.
What other tool you got?
Okay, we've got Marty. Can we? Oh. Marty, wait. Come on, guys. Let's find another tool in the truck or something. Rebar, yeah. Just try that. And we need the garlic planters. We need the garlic planters.
Take your foot out.
We need garlic planters behind it. Okay, now, garlic gets planted, again, it depends, right? Spacing in a row or spacing row per row, it's all a matter of fertility. You're going to be on the safe side. The safe side for garlic, I say 6 inches. That's really generous. So every 6 inch, 5 to 6 inches, put a nice clove in there.
How deep?
Just barely enough to get in. You know, the garlic will find its way in.
The bottom down?
Oh yeah, like the famous bottom down thing. Not really fine if you have the time to do it.
And Bruce, by the way, we want straight rows too, darn it.
Straight.
That's great. Just when you put it, press it down. This way we gain a little bit of depth. And do 4 to 5 inches, not 6. That's good. That's good.
Okay. How many rows of
3?
Oh, I'm tired. Next.
Well, just remember, there's more seeds in a crooked row than are in a straight row.
Okay, we need more. Come on, guys. Come on. Get into it. We need more on the hammer thing. I hope we have enough garlic.
Carrie, it's hard for now.
Any more cloves? Oh, no.
Okay. Okay. As you can see, 4 feet is a bit of a stretch for most people. So think 3.5 feet wide or 3 for more smaller types of people.
How about tomatoes, where you need to, would you do 1?
Tomatoes on a 4 foot, it's just 1 for the whole width, and then I usually, it depends on the fertility, but on a good farm, every 2.5 foot.
How wide do you make your walk area?
What I did here is I did a typical for a small garden like this. I did what I do usually is 18 inch, 1.5 foot. It's enough that you don't have to become an acrobat, but it's not wasting very much space.
Then what do you use for harvesting and carrying things in? You just use a
wheelbarrow. Wheelbarrow will go in fine. No, carts, forget it. Carts won't fit in this system. Okay, we're not going to do this in this situation. If this is not a mowed path situation, I'm going to show you how to curve it the other way, which is the way that you raise your beds and create a low path. In that case, you don't need ever a mower. You mulch everything. You mulch the path. Whoa, here comes a big trenching deal there. That's fine.
Do you think that one way is better than the other to have the mowed or the sub-mowed? For the fertility of the soil, for the production, is one better than the other?
If you work on a small surface, I would choose the curved out because the saving on the time to mow, and because the grass does not steal fertility away from the bed.
On your mowed walkways, how wide are those?
24. And then my last farm is 36. I went to 36 in the one you saw, but I used to do only 24. But 36 gives me even more space to kind of relax, and